world towards total totalitarian regimes. In my view, the reset will be a move in the world towards total totalitarian regimes. I mean, basically, the reset idea comes from the WEF, or the World Economic Forum, that started out in Switzerland, in Davos. We are the oldest existing democracy, and yet we support these kind of organizations. But the Swiss are good at taking money from everybody. To make a long story short, this club, the WEF, has nothing at all to do with a democracy and everything to do with a system that is run by an elite. In former times, we had the Romans, the consuls, and later on the Principe or the emperors and so forth. And then we had feudal system in Europe that lasted until the end of the 20th century. And we had in the world never democracies until just recently, because when the US constitutions came about, it wasn't meant that everyone could go and vote. No, it was for educated people to vote and not for everyone. And so now we have these democracies. Democracies are failing, and the Schwabs of this world, they think that they should run the world. They should run the countries. It's like Mr. Biden. He prefers to avoid the constitution and bypass the constitution. It's a very bad example. A president should uphold the constitution, even if he feels that the judges on the Supreme Court made a mistake, but he should maintain the integrity of the Supreme Court. Not every decision they take is desirable, but in general, it's good for a country to have a Supreme Court that is not a populist court, that is not where the judges are just elected by the people. The judges should be really qualified people, the people that are on the Supreme Court. I'm negative long term about the US dollar for different reasons, but largely because of the inflationary pressures that will occur. And about the BRICS currencies, I suppose more and more trade will occur between countries and countries, and they will settle the trade in non-US dollar currencies. I see a big opportunity in the stock of some emerging markets. First of all, the Latin American markets, Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, Peru, Chile, and so forth, because in World War III, and that is not my view, but some of my educated friends, they think that World War III has begun. Latin America would be a little bit aside. The war would be fought between Russia, China, and the US and Europe and so on. So in that scenario, you want to have some money in Latin America. I also
No, DBMM, that's Mark Faber, the Boom, Doom, and Gloom report. And he's somebody I've listened to for a long time. What's amazing, I think he lives in Thailand now. I think he's originally Swiss. He speaks 5 or 6 languages. And I think, if my memory is correct, his investment banking background started with Barings or one of those companies. Maybe it wasn't Barings. Anyway, in Hong Kong. But what's amazing, he must be in his 80s, but he smokes. He doesn't stop him. Let's go down this. Look, I don't think it's possible. I know Ham won't join, but he may ask me to call in. But I also know that he's with his family right now. So I just got back from New York late last night, and then this morning it was pouring down rain here, so it took me a couple of hours to get my dog. That's why I said I just got back this morning. Yeah, really not. I got back last night, but to finish up the trip, getting my dog, that was sort of by mid 10:30. So this morning, I'm a little bit tired, but it was a great trip. I saw him and uh, the, for lack of a better terminology, the Trento mining guy and the water guy and a couple of other investors and some other important people. So it was a good trip, but it was a quick trip. Rob Galen is number one. Hey, Gerald. Hey, Sisu. I don't know why, but I feel completely foggy in my head. I don't know if it's pollen or if I'm come down with something. I watched a video. I can't say it on YouTube, so I won't. But I watched a video. A doctor is warning that we have to be very careful not to catch COVID again, to re catch it. I hope I'm all right with that. So anyway, if I come across a little disjointed, it's because my head is fully fogged, and I don't know why. The when I was up at the one meet, we went down to this beautiful salon to sit and eat and meet and have a drink. Well, nobody had alcohol, but I got up to use the restroom. When I was in there, it's so beautiful. They have these mirrors, and I'm walking to the sink. I walked right into the wall. Boom! I'm like, what the? And it's because I can't really see out of this ear. I was very embarrassed. Luckily, nobody was in the room, but I like, what the heck? Anyway, it's embarrassing. All right, waiting for the moon. El Duderino, Rob Galen, GTII. We spoke about GTII up there. I'm going to leave that as the events unfold. But there's the potential, I think, for good events. Hey, Oscar, Paul, what's this? Lion of all trades. I don't know. Lion is prospecting for members, so make sure you go over to https twitter.com Lion of all trades. He's pretty good at picking stocks and opportunities. Hey, Johnny V. Oh, maybe it's a tweet regarding GTII. Anyway, I know he also has a Discord that you guys should join. I don't know what Discord is. Morning. Hey, Nan Zadok. We will prevail. Yeah, there's a lot of negativity out there, and a lot of accusations fly. But remember that what we're up against is a completely corrupt regulatory environment, completely disinterested Congress for the large part. Journalists are useless. And what you have brokerage firms that benefit from the trading and the commission and the stock loans fees. So it's very hard to change. I was speaking with a friend of mine that I have known for years this morning. And he said, so people are starved for, companies are starved for capital. I said, it's not that exactly. It's that they're starved for honest deals, honest capital. That's what they're starved for. Let me see where GTII is trading. You guys are making me think it's going up. Yeah, 24 cents. I would rather, I have a pretty good idea of what's going on, but I'd rather leave that for Ham to talk about. That's how I see my role right now. And anyway, that's how I'd let that go. Hey, ESK, good afternoon. Yeah, you're right. It is up 24 cents. Arca said it's going to 9 cents. Well, Arca's pretty good with his analysis. But the thing is, all technicians, it doesn't matter who the technician is, if there's a quantum leap or a quantum change or a, was it Heidegger's cat? You know, that idea that a particle could both be there and there at the same time. Just a change in situations changes the charts, and there's no technician that can predict that. Once it happens, they're able to see it somehow that it's in the chart. But, I'm not saying anything negative at all. I mean, ARC is good, but if there's a material change in situation, that could just move the chart up or down, I guess, significantly, and you start from that level. Sky rockets at night, afternoon delight. What a song. At least you didn't grow up having to hear that song. Hey, Barbara. Yeah, that's well stated, Rob. Hopefully there is news attached to this GTII move. Hey, Frank. Beetlebug. Thank you, Beetlebug. I can tell that you're concerned. What's up with you? You aren't coming on much these days. Concerning given the drop in GTII. Well, I don't know what to say to that. You got your time. I read it out. Hey, Henry. There's Lion of all trades. Archimide. Arc, really? I don't know. I don't know. And I wouldn't know enough one way or the other, frankly. But I think, Lee, it is important that people realize that there's so much money involved on the shorting side, the counterfeiting side, the criminal side, that everything, you know, this is an easy trade. If you have no morals and you can sell stock that doesn't exist, and you listen to your attorneys that says, hey, it's okay, it's an easy trade. You just gotta keep the pressure on from every direction. And you might be, I don't know what to say. IBKR CEO talking. I don't know about anything about that. Finally, Holo hits a new low. A line of all trades, AMB. Well, David, this idea of a carbon tax. See, I can't read this. I can't read this one article to you without being censored on YouTube. But the real problem for the planet is there's a lot of us. There's what, 8 billion of us? And this carbon tax isn't going to change that fact. It's not going to change it. Yeah, yeah. The other guy said it's concerning that the reason I didn't come on yesterday, I was in New York City where the girls are pretty. And they are. They are. When you get in the rarefied places. Yes, Tony, I know a little bit about that volume today, but I just really want to let uh, I really want to let Ham, and I'm not promising that he'll come on today because he's with his family right now. But if he won't call in here, he'll have me call into him. But we'll just have to wait until he's available either today or tomorrow to talk about it. That's right, X1. It could be hay fever. I don't get hay fever, but it's that similar feeling. My dad used to get it, but it bugs me. I'm worried because I was on a train. I was with humanity. Oh, the humanity. There's nothing quite like going into an Amtrak train station men's room in New York City or DC, the capital of the world. There's nothing like it for realizing that we're just part of humanity. Ugh. But I start thinking, is there COVID here? Ugh. Hey, Robert, good to see you. What was your prediction? Just stopped in to see what condition my prediction is in. Hey, John, how are you? You're back from Hawaii. Hawaii. Um, ah, I'm all worn out. That's interesting, Augustine. I think I'm not a good enough chartist for all that, but I think the chart in Finger does look intriguing to the bullish side when I last looked, which was I think on Saturday. I look, we've been talking about it. They go slowly, deliberately, carefully, but successfully. And I think there's 2 or 3, even 4 items yet to be revealed for Finger that are going to be very positive. Sure, it could squeeze, but I think the fundamental inputs mean a double, triple, possibly 4x, just as a matter of course. Question is how quickly. I know I get all that, but I think it's steady on, steady on. I didn't get a new computer. I need to get a new computer. I need to get a new brain. My brain is, I don't know why it's hurting. Maybe it's enough complaining. Maybe jewelry. Sometimes you gotta get mean. I mean, plumb that dog mean. That's the only thing. It's the only thing between living and dying. It's just the way it is. Pizza rules. Schrodinger's chart. Schrodinger's chart. That's pretty funny, Tim. Pretty funny. Well, I have this. I was telling him it's here somewhere, but anyway, it doesn't help to show you. But I just got a notice on a company that I used to have like 150, 180,000 shares, something like that. And it's a very successful healthcare company. But just like the rest of them, they take these deals, toxic, shorted down to oblivion. They do the reverse split. Well, they just announced a reverse split. And my remainder now is I now own one share after a decade of reverse splits. I now own one share at $4. And to get it in my name, they want $175. I don't think I'll be sending that 175. Why is GTII climbing? Well, it used to be, Marlon, you could say things like more buyers than sellers. But now under Gensler, just sell whatever the heck you want to sell. If you don't own it, sell some more. If that's not enough, sell some more. Get a Xerox machine, start printing it, mimeograph, start shung, shung, shung. Keep selling. Gensler doesn't care. Oh, she's having my baby. Oh, what a song. Oh, God. And you had to hear that song over and over again. That's when you wished that the audience of the radio stations did not include women. I can't imagine a single guy wanting to hear, she's having my baby. I can't even remember the words. Oh, God. Yeah, Schrodinger's cat. Sky rockets in flight, afternoon delight. It's termed on a dime. The criminals press their bets. They don't get arrested. They hire capybara. They can say whatever they want. They can bash on any medium they want. Gensler's not going to do anything. And more importantly, they can sell hundreds of millions of shares that don't exist, and Gensler doesn't care. He has the balls to go before Congress and say, we have the deepest, most transparent, most honest markets in the world, or something to that effect. Gensler's full of crap. Oh, so now you're saying good things for GTII, unlike last few weeks, but not Finger? I don't know, Beetlebug. I don't know if you have a brain, if you do, I don't know if you use it for critical thinking, but this isn't like black and white. This isn't like determining that something is true and something else is false. This is a battle. It's an ebb and flow. And the markets change every single day. You all constantly sell stock that doesn't exist. You add to it, you add fudstering and doubt and all that. So you can make your quick $500,000 a day, go home to the wife and say you did good for the world. But markets, it doesn't matter if you want to stick to me. Doesn't matter what I said last week. Doesn't matter what I said yesterday. Doesn't matter what I said a year ago. Markets, each new day, you have to look at the data, the evidence you have, and make a decision each day on any stock. Do I initiate a position to buy it? Do I add to my position? Do I reduce my position? Do I sell? And in your case, do I short or just continue to counterfeit? I'm tired. Big Orange, I'm tired of all the negative. It wears me out. And I'm going to just try to, not. Yeah, there's a lot of fun. Hey, Laffy. Well, you're nothing if not observant. And so I'll answer it, Laffy. I was asked a week or so ago not to talk about it anymore. So I don't. And I won't. But I think I talked about it enough that you still have information there to act upon one way or the other, depending on how you feel about it. Oh, that's true. And this guy Buttigieg wanting to get everybody into electric vehicles. You can talk about carbon tax, but no one is talking about every 5 to 7 years, there is a nuclear disaster. It started in the UK with that one up there, Suffolk, Weatherford, whatever, in the 50s. There was another one somewhere, but I know in the United States, on the West Coast in California, there was one. It was all hidden up. And then there was 3 Mile Island in the 70s. And then there's there might have been another one, but Chernobyl came, I think, 86. And that was a big deal. And then Fukushima Daiichi came. And no one talks about it. And there was just 2 months ago on the other side of Japan, earthquakes that had to take out 5 reactors. It's not in the news. And radiation, these elements, we have no defense against it. Our planet saves us from the radiation from space and the sun, but we're creating it down here for electricity. Just to build a nuclear power plant involves oil, concrete. Cement is one of the worst violators, if you want to call it that, of carbon policy. But I don't know what it is. We want to believe, we want to make up our own truths, and they don't exist. Yeah, Big Orange. I think if anything, Ham will go on with Ace tonight, and Ace is great. Ace is the place for the helpful advice man. But I think I think you can go there. I just don't feel comfortable. I was just up there. It doesn't. Anyway, I'd rather just say I didn't talk about it. News today of officers selling. Well, officers, John, I don't know if it's changed, but they awarded themselves huge positions of stock. And every month they sell 1%. That's how they get some reward. For a long time, GTII didn't do anything, didn't make a wrong step. I'm not going to go through the list again, but they didn't do deals with the shorts like COSM or other companies. And, everything's a trade-off. Nothing on Wall Street's free. People aren't here to give you money. So this is the way these officers rewarded themselves. But it's not big. What is it, $3,000 a month or something? It's nothing huge. Oh, it's 3:00. A morning star pattern. Wow, that's pretty good, Lion. Lion thing, you're free again. Yeah, the train, David. Oh my God. It's so they did change the seats so that the seats you feel like they're cleanable. But my gosh, it's so third world. And it's like this, you walk get a cup of coffee and you're falling all over the place. In Spain, you can go from Seville to Madrid. You're going 200 clicks per hour, and it's like you're standing in your living room. It's just smooth. But we spend our money on war. I don't know how to show your video, but others can look. This computer, it'd be great if I could click it and show it, but I don't know how to do that. And I'm afraid my computer would freeze. Yeah. That's possible. Certainly. We've got guns of our own. She said, so you're from Texas, son. Where's your boots and where's your gun? We laughed at that. And I told her I have guns. She couldn't see. Something like that. No, never was. Never will be. I predict the whole market is going to collapse before there's any change. No, there never was. The first head of the SEC was Joe Kennedy, and he was put in place by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And Roosevelt put him there because Kennedy was notorious for what's called stock. Was it called stock pools? Forget what they called them back then. But what insiders on Wall Street would do would be to all start buying a stock, run it up, and then the public would jump in and the stock would soar. And then Kennedy would get out at the top or close to it. And then when it inevitably collapsed, retail would lose money. So FDR put him in charge because he figured who better to police the crooks than a crook himself. And I think Joe Kennedy did do a good job at the SEC, but I think since then, I don't know who. See, Fred Jones, Afternoon Delight is an awesome song. See? She's having my baby. that's pretty good. And the sound did suck. Oh God, the songs back then. Kim Carnes had a good one. Love hurts. No, it wasn't that. Until my arms break. It's doing something till my arms break. I can't remember it. Very funny. Very funny. Well, I think that's right, Travis. I don't think this is the moment in time where it's going to, but I could be wrong. I mean, that's the risk. We are getting closer and closer to where we've run out of time. And I strongly recommend to everyone, it's not financial advice, of course, but it isn't. But I think everyone should buy gold, everyone should buy silver, everyone should buy uh, uh, precious metals, oil and gas. You got to get out of the market. Hey, Yancy. Well, so another way to say what you're saying all in, if it's true, and I think it seems reasonable, is on an inflation adjusted basis. There's at least two markets that are not trading at all-time highs. They're not in a bubble. Real estate, I would argue, is in a bubble. Bonds are in a bubble. The S&P 6 are in a bubble. But gold and silver are not in a bubble. Well, that's exactly right. Well, I mean, you can't listen to the news. I mean, well, there you go, Robert. And that's also true. I can't repeat the numbers because I don't remember them. But in the United States, there's something like 300 or 400 million vehicles. It might be more than that. So to change them all to EVs, it'll take 20 or 30 years. It just won't happen overnight. And it shouldn't be. Gerald, I think being on Reg's show doesn't mean anything in terms of price action. It may have some meaning in the back office, but what I think is more relevant with Finger is the chart action looks good to me. I mean, it can be changed like that. And to be repetitive, I expect 3, 4, 5, even 6 bits of good news coming out with Finger over the next weeks/months. So, well, I I mean, there's two aspects of my not talking about something. I'm not allowed to talk about material information that hasn't been disclosed publicly. And I'm not saying that that's the case. The other thing is, oftentimes you hear things uh, as part of confidence, and you shouldn't blab your mouth. And so those are two areas. In terms of it, I don't know which one you're talking about, but if I'm asked, hey, I gave you this information in confidence, I'd appreciate if you don't talk about it. Well, I honor that, or do my best anyway. Well, I can understand that feeling. Uh, on one part of your statement, Finger, it's around $2 a share. I don't know how long you're going to be on that beach in Florida, but if you're there, let's say through the summer and into the fall of this year, I'd be willing. I mean, I can't bet you. I don't know who you are. You have some hidden name, but I'd bet you $1 that Finger will be up 2, 3, 4 times from here. But you know what we're fighting, Wall Street in all of these stocks. I guess it's just hard to understand. If you go to a butcher, and for some reason every hatchery egg factory in the United States has either been blown up or has gone out of business, there's a shortage of chicken, the price goes up. Supply and demand. There's a fire on massive cattle acreage in Texas. There's fewer pounds of beef for sale. The price goes up. But in the US markets, every single stock, and you shouldn't be in any of these stocks. There's only 6 stocks, 7 stocks that go up right now. And if you want to feel comfortable and be right every single day, just buy those stocks. But there will come a time when the S&P 6 or the Magnificent 7 collapse. But until then, the money's just going to pile into them. Wall Street is about trying to make projections. I see something that's undervalued and I'm willing to wait, but you're not willing to wait. You just like to bitch and moan, oh, it's going nowhere. Well, okay. But again, if it's going nowhere, what are your choices? Sell, sit on a beach and moan, buy more, or if you're one of the criminals, sell stock that doesn't exist. Those are the choices, or some iteration of all of those. But if it makes you feel good to bemoan it, well, you're not going to make any money. You have to look at the situation. If I were looking at it the way you are right now, I would notice, and I for sure would notice that GTII, out of the blue, is trading 1.3 million shares and is up almost 30%. I would notice that. That's the market telling you something. What is it telling you? Something. But you're sitting there on the beach and it's going nowhere. Hey, you're up 30% from yesterday. Sell. 30% in a day is pretty good. In terms of finger, it's up 2%, 226. I think the chart looks good. But you don't care to do your own homework. You don't care to study the story. You don't believe in the story. So you don't see $2 as an opportunity to add to your position. You don't see $2 as a reason to hold the stock. You see $2 as a reason to bemoan your situation. Well, that's your choice. And I appreciate you sharing it with the rest of us on the beach, going nowhere. Blew out your flip-flop, stepped on a pop top. I hope you're having a hard life down there on the beach. But finger, I'm not going to run through the list again. There's an interview that you can watch. There's other pieces of data. There's research from Benchmark. But Finger did a transaction with Lind Partners. There were something like 4 million, 6 million shares short. The stock went to 9. Everyone raced over to COSM because it was sheer genius. Well, as that happened, in 10 days, Lind Partners or Lind Partners clients, why do I know that it's their clients or themselves? Because nobody else would do that trade that didn't have a toxic convertible note in place. They sold 100 million shares in 10 days. Where'd that come from? Oh, you can't just add up day by day by day. Oh, you're not taking into account deliveries from overseas. They bought it back and they're not showing. Well, one, if they bought it back, you'd see it in the price of the stock. Haven't seen it. There was not 100 million shares outstanding to deliver. But that's a year ago. Since then, there's been additional selling. If you don't want to be in stocks where under the United States securities system, cocky young men can get in a fake office on Madison Avenue and start being a front for short sellers, counterfeiters, selling stock that doesn't exist, constantly driving it downward. Going back to supply and demand, the supply never ends. Ever. Ever. And Gary Gensler doesn't care. I think it makes him criminal. But he's at least incompetent. So when they're going nowhere, what you have to take into account is every single stock, almost every single stock that we've examined over the last year and a half or so is subject to counterfeiting, is subject to Lind Partners, the Kramer brothers, Yorkville, other groups I'll leave unnamed, and their clients just selling stock that doesn't exist. That's just a fact now. And we can criticize each other. We can say, oh, pump and dump, pump and dump, pump and dump. Or we can just recognize that Gary Gensler Adina Friedman, Robert the Crook Cook, Chuck E. Cheese Cromwell don't care. They don't care. So if you buy a stock, it doesn't matter how good the story is, doesn't matter how good the CEO is, doesn't matter revenues, doesn't matter future. They're going to say, if they did a toxic deal anytime in their past, the criminals are committed to selling that stock downward. Doesn't matter if they get a settlement with an attorney, doesn't matter if they settle up and they get the warrants withdrawn. The original position is in place and they have to protect it. And they're going to sell stock and sell stock and sell stock. They're going to sell stock that doesn't exist. They can't locate it. They can't borrow it. They can't deliver it. They break the law on a scale that would make Scarface blush. And Gary Gensler doesn't care. But you sit there on a beach going nowhere, and your implication is you're pissed off. Well, I'll give you a suggestion. Sell. It's not advice. But if you don't like the situation, sell. Short squeezes, when they come, happen over a matter of 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Out of years of trading and waiting and waiting. Going nowhere. Get out. Just get out. Be easy on your life. Take your tax losses and go into the S&P 6, the Magnificent 7. Just go do what you do homework on. But of those two, in the short run, I would be going, oh my gosh, GTII's up on over 1 million shares and it's 30% up. That would get it be saying to myself, if you have your mindset, hey, I have a chance to get out. Or, hey, maybe I should be buying. There's a trade here. I don't know. You got to make your own judgment on that. But something's up. If you want to sell a stock that you don't like, the time to do it is when the volume's there. Get out. Finger, but you don't care. I mean, I don't know why I'm even bothering. Finger is going to be positive in earnings, so you and your friends are going to have a hard time shorting a stock that has positive earnings. They have a large investment bank that filed a shelf registration, $300 million. Imagine if they make an acquisition. Imagine if they raise money to increase the revenue from their safe, predictable rolling of minutes in the world's largest economy. And they're a virgin entrance into the insurance business in the world's largest economy. But go ahead, sit on your beach nowhere, man, going nowhere. But thank you for contributing this morning. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Red pepperoni. I know, the bullet train. Well, that's it. The management can reward themselves. Who was that? David Allen Cole? All my exes live in Texas. Texas. The earthquakes in Taiwan may be a warning for all of us about earthquakes. There's a guy I follow and I trust on YouTube, and he's pointing out that the sun is ejecting these huge solar flares or something, and the pressure hits the earth and something about our magnetic sphere being weak right now. And he just 2 or 3 weeks ago called for earthquakes. So I wouldn't be surprised, David, if there aren't additional earthquakes in the world coming up. But yeah, heartache, heartache. That's it. I just don't remember the words. It's nothing but a heartache, love until your arms break, and something then he lets you down. It's a heartache. Na, 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 na. Clever. Oh, what a night. Oh, yeah. Uh, the gold market is definitely manipulated. The London, New York, Chicago price of gold is manipulated. I think gold is hypothecated and rehypothecated. I think a lot of the Wall Street products are fake. And yeah, gold is completely manipulated. Some wonder whether we have our 8,000 tons, whatever it is, of gold at Fort Knox, even. Canada sold its gold, a lot of it. The UK sold a lot of their gold. Uh, I think there's been wars over gold that right in front of our eyes. Saddam Hussein, uh, Gaddafi, uh, Chavez, Hugo Chavez. But yeah, gold is manipulated. Silver is massively manipulated. Uh, Her name is Blythe Masterson or something like that at JP Morgan. And she came up with it. And silver is enormously manipulated. So you can say, just like that other gentleman, oh, I'm sitting on the beach, nothing's happening, it's never going to happen. Do, 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 Eeyore, Eeyore, Eeyore. Or you say, you know what? I see an opportunity. They can't manipulate it forever. Can they manipulate it for decades? Yeah. But I'll buy in and I'll wait. I think gold will be $40,000 and silver could be the same, but believe it or not, one for one. Um, the easiest place to buy bullion is AppMex. But if you're learning, I like there's several that I would recommend, but I think Mahoney at Gold Silver is a good place too. Because they're expensive. Because there's no interest anymore. Galadon, I can't give advice, but if there's not much of a premium on those calls, the time to buy is when no one wants to. If you wait to feel good that everyone else is buying, you'll have missed the opportunity. Oh, he's not going. I see. All right. His comment was that he's not selling. All right. I get you. It's hard, short little snippets. Well, you don't know if those plants are out of business. You don't know. Uh, yeah, I think I think gold is headed it's a good projection, but I think gold, um, the first stop for gold 3,000, then 10,000, something like that. But I think silver will go back. Right now, silver trades around, I forget, 80 to 1. It was as high as 120 to 1. Gold 120 times the price of silver. I think it's 85 to 1 now. I don't know. You can do the arithmetic. Um, it will at least go to 16 to 1. 16 to 1. But I personally think silver will go to par with gold. Well, beetle bug, sweetie pie. Um, you're unsettled and troubled. Thank you for sharing your feelings. And you know, obviously you can't do your own thinking, so you're unsettled if it's not repeated to you each and every day over and over and over again. Well, I'm sorry. I stopped talking about ZJYO. We'll see what happens. Yeah, yeah. That's entirely possible. I can't argue with that against you. I agree with you. I don't know. Free riding is I don't know what they'd be accused of free riding. But hey, if you want to take the side of Alpine, you can. John Hurry's a great guy. His wife, another great human being. But I don't think you're taking their side. Um, yeah, I just don't. I can't think of anything that they were free riding on. I got you. He's going nowhere. All right, I was being hard on him. I make that mistake all the time. It's hard to interpret. So hmm. I don't know what you mean by that, Tom. No, they'll pay you. They'll pay you. They're already doing everything they can to keep the stock prices down. But if you sell your stock at some fantastic price, they will pay you. They will pay you. We talked about MMTLP yesterday. Um, I that's a good description. They trapped the shorts. Um, I had a good conversation with Junk Savvy, and she's on almost every morning discussing it. And there's no question that the shorts were trapped in MMTLP. And from my own standpoint, I haven't got my shares yet. I don't know if I ever will. But I think each of us can resolve our own situation in MMTLP by asking to have our shares transferred to whatever AST is called now, Kiplinger or something. Um, Yeah, I agree with you. I think the shorts were trapped. Hey, Jenny L. Jenny Rebecca. Or days old. Do you see the world? I'm now singing right now. I'm not drinking. All right. HYMC. I don't know what that one is. I don't know, Polly. Um, I mean, a good guideline is April 15th, but I don't have any clue. I don't think lawsuits will go anywhere. I really think the way to get these guys to hurt is to hurt them in their pocketbook. But there's there's a couple of views. One is that the the other side, us, we are pumping and dumping, and we're speculating, and the shorts are cleansing the markets, and every business plan of every company out there is a bad idea. Every team is scamming, and that the shorts are saving us somehow. That's the prevailing view. But these concentrated guys, mostly men, as far as I know, they're all men other than John Hurry's wife. You can narrow it down further, but I'm not going to do it live. Uh, uh, Counterfeit shares in such a volume that they move hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars out of the United States without paying taxes. Now, I've heard that a lot of them want to get it back in the States somehow. I don't know how that all works. But this is a scam on such a scale that regulators are bought. I wouldn't be surprised if court systems and lawyers are bought. And to sue, you look like a young guy by that picture. You could spend 40 years suing and never get anywhere. The key to getting these guys is in their pocketbook. Yeah, I would buy physical, but as you know, there's a lot of risks in owning physical. There's a lot of risks in storing it. But I happen to agree with you. I think the best thing is to own physical. My mic went out. I read the letter out last time, but I guess the mic went out. I don't know if there was a deadline in the first quarter. According to the interview that Frank Kristen gave, his personal goal was to have a dividend out by the end of last year. That was the fourth quarter of last year. I don't read any significance in it. In terms of the uplisting, I think the uplisting is a risk for us because if he is working with a group like Lind Partners, I don't think he is working with Lind Partners, but a similar group, they may be requiring that cash for some reason for fees or in the process of uplisting, and that would be a negative. But he did say on his November interview both for WDHI and for HNRC, that they're working on other transactions. So I don't see any real significance in the fact that they didn't make a payment of a dividend in the first quarter. In terms of trading of worldwide holdings, that's up to the SEC as far as I know. I mean, perhaps the SEC's given their approval and the company's slow walking it, it's possible. But Worldwide Holdings was also, according to Frank's interview, looking at additional acquisitions. Now, I think it's important. I mean, it may not matter to you, but it's important that Worldwide be able to sustain its $3.50 predicted price or higher. And part of that is additional acquisitions. So if that's what's going on, doesn't bother me. So it's disappointing. I own HNRC and I think it's 2 cents. And, the crushing continues. But the only thing that's changed since Frank Christensen's interview, other than time, is there's been more shares issued. So I don't think the dividend will be 15 cents for sure a share. And it might be a lot less, but you got to go a long way down to have the cash dividend be less than 2 cents a share, and the stock's trading at 2 cents. And HNRA is trading at $3. I think it's headed to $10 or $15. And he's going to distribute that at some point this year, at least according to his interview. So, yeah, I would prefer that he wasn't radio silent and that it hadn't taken this long. But to me, I think it's an opportunity to add to positions. Possibly. I don't think it has to go to that, though, TK16. We watch it every single day and talk about it every day, and it goes on and on and on. But what we forget is the progress is being made behind the scenes in the fundamental story finger. And all you need is a blowout quarter of earnings, which I'm not predicting that this coming quarter or the next, but soon, and then forever. Earnings are going to ramp up, and the shorts are going to be in a lot of trouble, in my judgment, in finger. I have no idea on the 10K. Typically, 10Ks come out, earnings come out 15 days after the end of the quarter. For the annual report, 15 days after the end of, 45 days after the end of the quarter would be May 15th. So I would say May 15th. No news on HNRC that I see. I look, but I continue to believe because Frank, because of his interview, said he's going to distribute cash. He said 15 cents a share twice in an interview. And then at the end of that same interview, he said, well, we haven't decided for sure. It could be stock. I don't think it'll be 15 cents a share. He has that 15 cents, or did have that 15 cents. But I think it could be 10 cents, could be 7 cents, could be 5 cents. The stock's trading at 2 cents. It'll have a dramatic effect on the price of the stock. The HNRA, a group who got screwed by their sponsor of their SPAC, raised money at $2, just criminal. But they raised it. and they have proven assets, proven reserves, and proven cash flow. Everything's good. They reduced the upside target of their stock from $58 down to $15 roughly by doing this stupid financing. But hey, it's over with, and we are where we are. But the stock's trading at $3, HNRA, and it can go to 10 or 12 or 15. That's going to be distributed to us as a dividend as well. It hasn't happened yet. So if you're tired of waiting, just like with any stock, each and every day, you open up your list. Do I sell it? Do I hold it? Or do I buy it? Those are three choices. And for me, I am holding HNRC because it's trading at 2 cents. I think they're going to distribute a cash dividend at a multiple of that 2 cents a share. And they're going to distribute HNRA stock. I can't figure out quite what it's worth per share to us. I've tried, and I just, it's too opaque. But it could be worth pennies a share to us as well. But you can get out at 2 cents and move on, or you hold it. I'm holding it because there's 2 dividends coming. Is it fun to wait? No. But I don't know what to tell you about waiting. I've found that in my life there's a lot of waiting, and it's beyond my control. You can sue them. You can sue them, but how much money do you have? Because the banks are going to have Gibson done. They're going to have $1,500 an hour attorneys, $2,500 an hour attorneys. They'll have 24 of them, and you'll have your one attorney. As soon as you run out of capital, she's going to say to you, "Well, I think we should settle," and you're going to say, "I don't want to settle. I want to prove it." And she's going to say, I can't afford to work for free." I haven't said anything about GTII. The stock is trading at 24 cents. It's 1.4 million shares, and the bid is 24 cents. So it's showing strength. But Jordan, if Ham asks me to call him before 4 o'clock, I'll share it with you. If tomorrow we have Ham talk, I'll let him talk about it. I don't feel comfortable speculating with what I have. So you're going to be on the beach, going nowhere. Going nowhere. There's a song says that. Thank you for that well thought out question. I'll give you a well thought out answer. I don't know. Well, mining companies make a lot of sense. There you go, John. That was my first answer. It's too expensive. You're not an old man. 50 is the new 49. You're not an old man. Well, thank you. You're always got positive input. Can't imagine that you're a fudster for silver. I don't agree with you. Silver has, in a lot of situations, when you're mining for gold, silver's there. When you're mining for other things, silver's there. Even getting oil out of the ground in the wastewater, there's silver and some gold. But there used to be an enormous amount of silver reserves above ground in the United States. I can't recite to you the amounts because I can't remember, but I can tell you they're all gone now. There's no hidden supply of silver sitting anywhere. Silver is manipulated by JP Morgan and others with these contracts which are not regulated. And under Bill Clinton, hey, anything goes. I'm a Democrat. But I don't agree with you. Silver, there's uses for silver that far exceed the uses for gold. Whether you're talking military, health care, electronics, computers, and gold is more favored for jewelry, of course. But I don't think you're right on your rationale. But hey, that's what makes a market. My suggestion to you, don't buy silver if that's how you feel. And that would be funny. I think HNRA is a good investment. I listened to their call. I wish they had not been taken advantage of by the banksters. I don't know why private equity deserves 5, 6, 7x just for putting a deal together and why they take it up front. But hey, that's the world we live in. Hey, Michelle. No, I'm not. I don't know. I'll feel marvelous. That's a confusing question to me. Let me look it up. I show 6x1. I don't see 0 on the size at all. But I don't know. That's a confusing question to me. I don't see 0 on the size at all. What I think's I don't know for sure. And I was discussing this with a couple of people today on Logic. I think within the month, but I think sooner. But my friend who I trust thinks it'll take 30 days. They will have the binding agreement announced of the reverse merger. I think I think it's sooner just because they've had so much time. We were expecting it in November. It's clear the company wants to announce a binding deal rather than saying, oh, we might have something or it's going to happen. So what do you have to do? You have to get all your ducks in a row in terms of the year-end report and your financing and all that. I think it'll be done in the next couple of weeks. My friend thinks it could still take another 4 to 6 weeks. I don't know. So, but that's the time frame. I think we're getting close to it. They need to finish. They need to have their year-end finances, have numbers reported accurately, and they need to be in good standing in their reporting. So you're saying, will it upset the deal? No, I don't think there's an upset of the deal. Will it delay it? I guess we're experiencing that delay. I think now, based on information that I'm hearing, I was telling you I thought the price could be between, I forget now because I've been talking about it for so long. Maybe 40 to 60 cents, I think I was saying something like that, a share. I now think it'll be somewhere like maybe a 20 to 40 cents range, 20 to 40 cents range. Why? Because I believe in order to get a lot of these things done and to pay vendors, to pay employees and all that, I think they've had to issue some stock. We will get a reckoning on that. So I would look PS71. I would pick a lower number. Let's just pick one, 25 cents, not 50 cents. So then the question is, once the deal is announced, do the shorts, both legit and illegitimate, do they cover? So could the stock go to 50 cents, 75 cents, $1 in some sort of frenzy of covering? I would say that possibility exists in logic. I'm not betting on it, but I'd say it exists. The next question, if we pick a number out of the air of 25 cents a share, does the stock trade up to 25 cents a share? You can pick another number. You can call it 30, call it 40, call it 20. I'm just, for this example, using 25 cents. Would it trade up to that level? Well, I think so. But what are the risks? The risks are whatever company is coming in a reverse merger is going to have a valuation. So one of the risks is, how believable is that valuation? My guess is it's going to be believable because they've been working on this a long time. There have been a lot of alternatives. So my guess is it's going to be believable. The other risk is this new co, whatever you want to call it, if they don't have capital and they go to Jeff Easton at Lynn Partners, they are going to be SCREWED, and so will we. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, but that's a risk. What is already known is everybody voted on a 50-to-1 stock split. The new co is going to come into the shell based on that. So you're going to have I remember Brent talking about valuations in the 500, 600, 700, 800 million range. I don't know, use the low end of that, 500 million. You might have a stock that's $15, $20 a share. It's going to be hard to short that kind of stock. So my final comment on your question is, Logic's trading at a penny right now. If the deal is announced as finalized, and everyone's going to say, well, when? Let's just say 30 days from now, give or take, plus or minus 2 weeks. If a deal's announced, and if it's worth 25 cents, I don't know, I'm making that number up. And it doesn't squeeze, and it doesn't trade to 25 cents. Does it trade to 5 cents? Does it trade to 7 cents? Does it trade to 10 cents? That's a pretty damn good trade. You buy the stock at a penny and it goes to 5 pennies. It's 5x. Pretty nice trade. It's a pretty nice trade. So I think it's a buy. Because once the reverse merger is announced, there's nothing else to do. We will be, as discussed here before, somewhere between 10 and 15% of a new co. We're just there as shareholders in a new co, trading on, I hope, the NYSE, but it might be the NASDAQ, unfortunately. I think it's going up because there's more buyers than sellers. I have my thoughts on it, Dave, but I don't feel like I can talk about it right now. So we'll wait for Ham to discuss it. But you've got to look when you see volume like this and you see the stock up this sharply, it's a good sign. What it means? Did he say that? She say that? NASDAQ CEO is a she? Did she say that? Because she's not doing anything about it. But Michelle, I'll have to look that up because if she said that, I'll change my opinion on her. Not much, but somewhat. You've got me on the big screen in the rear cabin. Wow. It amazes me. It amazes me. Pretty soon I'll be as famous as Elvis. And there's people out there, who's Elvis? Level 2 shows 0. Yeah, I don't, by the way, David, I can see like 3 it's not level 2, but I can see 3 bids and asks below the market on my little service, and it doesn't go deeper than that. So it's not the best service that I have, but it shouldn't show 0 when there's a bid or an ask. It shouldn't show 0. I mean, it shouldn't. Maybe it does sometimes, but it shouldn't. I'm skipping a lot of this because it's people talking back and forth on finger call option. Yeah, isn't this something? Another container barge. And they also closed down an egg factory. If you didn't know better, you'd think we were at war with somebody. Birds got to eat, same as worms. All right, it's 4:00 and I want no, they didn't read it, drop the 10K. They, I've been talking for quite a few months about what I think's been going on in the background, and maybe finally there's been some resolution, but that's just one guess. Let's just let Ham talk about it. Let me see. All right, this is short, but I'm trying to force feed you guys some of the reasons that I was hoping that some of these stocks would trade so you could use the money to secure your financial independence. I haven't given up that they are going to make those moves, but there's no question that the other side is winning right now. But what impressed me when I went to New York, meeting with a lot of different people, there's no quit. There's no quit and quit. There's no, just because this cheating goes on, there are people fighting it, and I don't think that's going to stop. Oh God, I want to just read a couple of pages on fracking. The oil and gas industry in the United States uses fracking, the horizontal drilling, and a guy named George Mitchell invented it, or perfected it, might be a better word. But his company nearly went out of business a couple of times. And there was a young man in his, a young scientist, I guess, who came up with using fracking fluid. I think that was the breakthrough. I don't remember. But whatever he came up with, it worked. And this created a lot of fortunes in the United States. But fracking is basically taking the oil and gas out more quickly. Anyway, let me read this because my brain is pounding. I don't know why. Okay, so this chapter is called Fracking Insanity. Fracking's boosters celebrate fracking as the ticket to American energy independence and the savior of the U.S. economy. This is where I have a disagreement with Donald Trump. Its detractors excoriate it as a present and looming environmental catastrophe. I don't agree with that. That is contaminating our water supplies, spawning earthquakes, and releasing methane into the atmosphere. I don't agree with any of that. But I call it a perfect example, fracking, of short-term thinking, of America's disheartening penchant in the past half of a century to seize on short-term fixes rather than invest in longer-term goals. I'd also call it an example of why the United States is falling behind China when it comes to preparing for the future. And lastly, I'd call it another reason for gold prices to rise. Fracking, or hydraulic fracturing, is the technique of drilling horizontally through carbon-bearing rock. Fracking has made it possible to access oil and gas previously trapped in huge shale formations in Texas, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, and some other parts of the country. Fracked oil, along with oil obtained from tar sands, is known as unconventional oil, as opposed to conventional oil, which is produced simply by drilling holes in the ground. Fracking began to really take off in the early part of the 2010s, just a decade ago. It had long been known that areas of the United States, particularly the Southwest, but also Pennsylvania, that's the Utica and the Marcellus, upstate New York and elsewhere, sit atop deep layers of underground shale that is likely a very hard sponge containing oil and natural gas in its pores. The question was how to tear the sponge apart to let the oil escape. Fracking provided the answer. It is a multi-step process which includes drilling down vertically, sometimes as much as 10,000 feet, encasing the hole with cement to avoid water contamination, drilling horizontally into the shale layer for as much as a mile, that's horizontally, and blasting that hole, that horizontal mile, blasting it with massive amounts of water, sand, and various chemicals to create and widen fissures so that the oil can be brought to the surface. The most prolific producer is the Permian Basin, straddling West Texas and New Mexico. Its unique geology includes layers of shale upon shale, making it extraordinarily fertile. From little more than a rounding error at the beginning of the decade, Permian production today, this was written at the end of, just a couple, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Permian production today accounts for about 60% of shale production in the United States and has been rising at a rate of more than 1 million barrels per day per year. It is not surprising that many people believe that fracking has been a tremendous success. Since 2011, fracking has produced enough oil to boost U.S. production by more than 7 million barrels a day. I mean, you haven't seen that kind of production since when Elvis was alive. It has resulted in a resurgence of U.S. oil production to the point where the United States has surpassed its oil production records of the 1970s. Amazingly, the United States has become the largest oil producer in the world, beating out Saudi Arabia and Russia. Increases in natural gas production from shale, mostly from the Marcellus Shale formation, have been equally impressive. Indeed, America produces all the natural gas it can use and then some. And we've become a natural gas exporter, something few people would have believed possible just a few years back. And all the seeming glories of fracking have led many, both on Wall Street and in the political sphere, read Donald Trump, to proclaim a new age of energy independence, which it's not true. For the United States, it also has served to diminish any sense of urgency, which is the scary thing, about developing renewable energy to prepare for the day when oil production will hit any kind. Sorry, my head is fogged. When oil production of any kind will hit limits, as it inevitably will. The problem is fracking is mostly a chimera. One revealing sign that fracking isn't all it's cracked up to be, and who is that almost without exception, frackers haven't made any money, even from the prolific Permian Basin. Although they are taking money in from selling the oil they produce, they constantly need to borrow more just to keep the party going. Or as economists would say, they are free cash flow negative. Some frackers have declared bankruptcy. A particularly startling statistic is that according to the advisory from Evercore ISI, whoever that is, as cited in a December 2017 article in the Wall Street Journal, over the preceding decade, energy companies spent $280 billion more on fracking than they made from it. So over the decade prior to 2017, energy companies spent $250 billion more on fracking than they made. Since 2011, 2012, when fracking started in earnest, the frackers are more than $250 billion in the hole. I should just let him, rather than editing it, I should just let him read it. Not surprisingly, shale has been a lousy bet for most investors. According to the data provided by FactSet, as the S&P 500 index rose 80%, an index of U.S. producers, oil and gas producers, fell 31%. So how have frackers kept going? By taking on debt. Banks have been happy to lay out money in the hope of a brighter future. And I've talked about this before. Free money, cheap money, endless money, but it's gone. It's not there. They are betting on the Permian continuing to produce and to do so at an accelerating rate and cheaply enough that frackers will eventually become dramatically free cash flow positive. It hasn't happened, except in, they call the honey pots, the honey spots, but not in overall plays. But as prolific as the Permian is from a financial standpoint, even this mammoth field is subject to the same considerations and restraints as less productive fields. The biggest players in the Permian may turn in positive free cash flows in 2018 through 2020, but no one expects that these cash flows will come anywhere close to making up for the billions and billions of dollars of investments which have gone into the Permian Basin. It's not that frackers are hapless incompetents. Their problems reflect the limits which are inherent in the nature of fracking. Fracked wells get depleted far more rapidly than conventional wells. Well, that depends on where you're drilling, but yeah, in most cases, a horizontal well which has been fracked will produce 75 to 85% of the reserves in 18 months to 2 years. Fracked wells get depleted far more rapidly than conventional wells, with some experiencing 60% depletion of reserves within the first year of operation. Conventional wells and oil fields can continue to produce for decades. And that, by the way, is one of the Art Berman questions the theory when you look at reserve reports that these horizontal wells will produce for 40, 50, 60 years. That's extrapolating that the vertical wells produce that long. So obviously the horizontals will. And there's no proof of that yet. As a result, to keep production going, frackers must continually put money into developing new wells. This is why dedicated frackers like Chesapeake Energy in natural gas and Continental Resources in oil and of writing a $1 billion check to his divorced wife, CEO Ham fame, have seen capital expenditures rise considerably faster than fracking profits. All right, energy intensity. This isn't a problem just for the frackers themselves or for those who invest in them. It's a problem for all of us. The only truly meaningful question to ask about fracking is whether it can avert oil scarcities. And if so, for how long? Is it some magical, just in time gift that will keep on giving, keeping us awash in oil, just like we were when Elvis Presley was alive? Keeping us awash in oil for a long time to come? The fact that frackers have had to continuously invest more and more money just to keep production going is a strong indication that the answer is no. Rapid well depletion is just one reason fracking is costly. Equally, if not more important, is that fracking is highly resource intensive with oil, with water, with other inputs. Massive quantities of liquids and sands and chemicals must be transported to fracking sites. Wells must be cemented, waste disposed of, and huge amounts of diesel fuel brought in to run the heavy equipment. Once oil is produced, it must be transported to refineries, whether via pipelines or by trucks. Oil is critical to all these processes. And that circles back to the concept of EROI, energy return on investment. To evaluate contribution made by fracking, to determine how much oil it is contributing to the economy. You can't just look at one half of the equation, the oil released from the shale. You also have to take into account how much oil gets used up in the process. When you do so, the net energy gained from fracking looks increasingly underwhelming. There are a lot of pertinent statistics that point to fracking being, to some extent, a sleight of hand, a matter of robbing Peter to pay Paul. Some of the data has to do with something called energy intensity. Energy intensity measures how much energy an economy uses per unit of gross domestic product. An economy with high energy intensity expends a lot of energy in order to generate growth. An economy with low energy intensity gets by with less energy per unit of growth, which is obviously more desirable. Energy intensity in the United States has been rising sharply since the early parts of the past decade. This is worrisome, as it shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening. Like all highly developed economies, the United States generates most of its GDP, gross domestic product, around 80%, from its services sector. This should mean a decline in energy intensity because the service sector is far less energy intensive than the manufacturing and resource extraction sectors, which dominate less developed economies. And indeed, earlier this century, energy intensity in the United States was in a consistent downtrend. Starting around 2012, however, this has changed. For the 5 years ending in 2017, U.S. GDP grew at an average annualized rate of 2%, while oil consumption rose at about 1.7% per year. In other words, during this 5-year period, it took 78% of a barrel of oil to generate 1% of GDP growth. This was roughly on par with the developing world, including China and India. Meanwhile, during that same period, many European countries, admittedly with somewhat less growth than the United States, saw oil consumption decline. No matter how you adjust for growth, the rise in U.S. oil consumption relative to GDP over the past 5 years, this book was written 5 years ago, is a striking outlier. After starting the decade with oil consumption declining while GDP was growing, suddenly this most developed country, ours, is using nearly as much oil relative to GDP as in the very early 1970s. This is remarkable, particularly when you think how in an era when oil was plentiful and cheap. Let me read that sentence again. I somehow screwed it up. This is remarkable when you think how in that era, the 70s, oil was plentiful and cheap, meaning that there was little monetary incentive to use oil efficiently. The usual suspects don't explain it. For example, Americans have been driving a bit more this decade, but more fuel efficient cars compensate for the additional miles. What has changed? The most notable change is that fracking began to surge. And with consumer usage of gasoline and other oil products relatively flat, by far the most plausible explanation for rising energy intensity in the United States is that more and more of the oil is being diverted to the process of fracking. All right, let's just see this through. Let's look at this from a different angle with a different set of statistics. In roughly the first decade and a half of this century, the century we're currently in, through 2015, oil production in the United States climbed by a bit less than 50% to 8.4 million barrels of oil a day. That's production. Natural gas production increased in a similar fashion, and coal production declined by 15%. Overall energy production in the United States rose by about 45% in the first 15 years of this decade. During the same period, the value of the energy sector added directly to GDP. The value the energy sector added to GDP climbed by more than 4 times. In other words, the energy sector ballooned. It constituted an increasingly large part of the overall economy, but it didn't produce an extra amount of energy commensurate with that gain in size. The energy sector grew fourfold, but produced only 50% more energy. The energy sector in the first 15 years of this century grew by 4 times, but only produced 50% more energy. Energy is most effective in boosting GDP. When its contribution is used as a power source for every aspect of the economy. I'm going to skip this. Okay, I'm going to skip a couple of pages and go here. Fracking is a road to nowhere. It produces less net oil than is generally realized and will be producing even less as time goes on. Lately, producers have been opening new wells known as baby wells that are located near existing wells. These baby wells essentially cannibalize some of the production from the parent well rather than tapping into new, previously untappable pools of oil. But there's another serious knock against fracking. It has let us take our eyes off what we should be pursuing with a fanatic sense of purpose, the scaling up of wind and solar and other non renewable sources. And some people argue that those technologies don't work well. But the combustion engine didn't work that well when it was first created as compared to now. Imagine if we had spent the trillions of dollars that we spent bombing deserts in the Middle East and assaulting mountains in Afghanistan. Imagine if we had just spent part of that money on developing these alternative technologies. Mostly when you hear how urgent it is to focus on renewables, the focus is on the dangers of climate change and global warming. This is a good point he's making. I agree with this. The need to confront climate change is urgent. And by the way, its effects, from the relocation of millions of displaced people to rebuilding ravaged cities, will further add to the demand for energy. But you could even think that climate change is a hoax and still believe in the urgency of scaling up renewables based on the prospect for oil scarcities. Oil scarcities. The future is not your grandfather's Oldsmobile. If we wait until those scarcities are upon us, we will have missed the vote. Thinking that fracking lets us off the hook is a grievous mistake. Oil will remain the world's major energy source for a while, but scarcities will emerge and fracking won't ward the scarcities off. We should view whatever extra oil we can now produce as a welcome gift that lets us concentrate on alternative energy sources, which will increasingly be essential in replacing oil when our window of opportunity closes. Unfortunately, the United States isn't dedicating itself to that effort. While the United States lacks a coherent energy policy, China and the EU countries have been moving forward. China dominates renewable energy, including storage solutions, battery storage solutions, such as batteries, solar modules, nuclear technologies, and perhaps most important, grid technologies. In 2017, China spent 2.5 times what the United States spent on renewables. It spent more than 3 times as much as the United States on the most important renewable, solar energy. China accounted for 40% of global spending on renewables. The big challenge with wind and solar energy has always been storage. And look at MULN. They have a technology, but the criminals, the shorts, destroy it for their short term gain. It's estimated that in 1 hour, enough sun hits the earth to meet the world's energy needs for a year. I went to an energy conference years ago, and they were talking about that we could put satellites around the earth, concentrate the sun, and beam it down. And I said, that sounds great. But normally that sunlight reflects back into space. How would the earth absorb that new energy without heating up? And the scientist next to me, she didn't have an answer. And that goes back to the point. A lot of the problems are the fact there's so many of us alive on the planet. The big challenge with wind and solar energy has always been storage. It's estimated that in 1 hour, enough sun hits the earth to meet the world's energy needs for a year, but it's not available everywhere at all times. Wind has enormous potential. Turbines on a relatively small portion of the Earth's land, plus offshore turbines, could meet all the planet's energy needs. But you can't count on the wind. Storage solutions such as batteries don't make enough of a dent to solve the problem. A more promising approach, one that could mostly circumvent the storage problem, would be a massive electric grid able to transmit energy almost instantaneously from a locale where the sun is shining or the wind is blowing to far off regions connected to that grid. In conjunction with metering, specialized circuit breakers, and logistic algorithms, this is the essence of a smart grid. The more time zones such a grid could traverse, the better, potentially encircling the world. Such a grid requires ultra high voltage direct current cables. China's grid today consists of 15,000 miles of UHVDC cable, ultra high voltage direct connect. How many miles does the United States have of UHVDC cable? 0. While we're putting our resources in this company to scammers on Wall Street, we're not getting our electric grid built out the way the Chinese are. When China completes its grid, which will be the backbone for all of its electrical needs, including electric vehicles and smart highways, it will have spent more than $1 trillion to do it. $1 trillion. Where are we spending $1 trillion? Bombing deserts, assaulting mountains, forgiving student loans, tax breaks, and bailing out too big to fail banks. We're giving it to the banksters. This is more than twice what the United States spent to create our interstate highway in today's dollars. So China has spent more than $1 trillion on its smart electric grid, which is more than twice what we spent on our interstate system adjusted for inflation. Spending in the United States for a smart grid will be measured in the trillions of dollars. What are we printing our money for now? To save the banksters. We should be building out our smart grid. But hey, keep voting for the Democrats. If all it took were money, we still might be able to catch up, assuming that we had the will and the determination to do so. China, though, has an additional edge over the United States beyond China's big head start. Its government can mandate that the grid span the entire country. It's more complicated in the United States, where every state has its own zoning regulations. Under the rosiest of assumptions, it would take at least a decade for the United States to get to where China is today, by which time China will have moved even further forward. Where does this leave the United States? One possibility would be to work with China, that's what I'd go for. It wants to share the wealth for the price. The country has begun to export its grid technology as well as its solar and wind technologies to others, especially in the East. Its stated long-term goal is a $50 trillion worldwide grid. China, $50 trillion worldwide grid. That's almost the world's GDP in a year. It hopes to complete with the help of other countries by mid-century. What are we doing? What are we doing? There's consequences to our public policies. Whether we choose to use China's technology or to develop our own, one certainty is that fracking is not the answer. A second certainty is if we don't find a better answer soon, we will be ruining our complacency for a long time to come. All right, I'll leave it there. Celeste is going to be 6. Celeste is going to be 6. What a good kid. Well, NewCo is just a standard placeholder whenever you're talking about any merger or financing. But in the case of NextBridge Hydrocarbons, I don't think they're going to form a NewCo. They are the company. NextBridge is. But I could be wrong. I might have missed something in press releases, but I don't think they have intention of creating a NewCo per se. Now they may create some subsidiaries to keep risk off the balance sheet. I don't know. But NextBridge is the NewCo. I don't see inflation going down to 2%. I think he talks about lower interest rates to moderate interest rates in the real estate market in particular, and to support, I suppose, lower interest rates for government debt. But at the same time, he has to convince the world that he's fighting inflation and protecting the strength of the dollar. He doesn't want commodities and oil to be predominantly priced in some other currency other than the dollar. So he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. He has very little choice. He has very little choice. Yeah, I don't see. I get those connections, but I don't see that as I don't see the connection with interest rates. I see it with inflation. I see it with loss of confidence in the dollar. I see it as the risk of the bond market falling over. And but you have to understand there's other places people will send their money. The digital coins being the main place. So we'll see. But I think gold's going much, much higher, much, much higher. And I have thought that for 2 decades. No, I'm not paying any attention to you. And maybe it's rambling, but I want everybody. Oh, by the way, it's from this book. I want everybody, Stephen Lieb, China's Rise in the New Age of Gold, Stephen Lieb and Donna Lieb. I want everybody to be thinking about this. If Mark, if you believe Celeste is going to be able to drive an SUV around the country when she's 30 years old, you're not ready for the future. Unless there's a completely new technology built into SUVs. Um, finger's another thing I'll let Ham talk about, but this all I can keep saying. Look, TK16, Lynn Partners and its clients created a massive short position in Finger. Now, there's people out there say, "Oh, you don't know that, you can't prove it." Well, are you going to commit a crime out in the open? I guess you might as well, because Gensler's not going to enforce the laws. They continued to short the shares. They continue to counterfeit shares. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but we can run through it again, TK16. Finger makes a massive amount of predicted, safe, quote unquote, safe revenue by buying discounted minutes from the Chinese government and selling it into the Chinese telecom market. They're now doing that on such a scale that they have a big revenue base there. They have a division called Sapientus, which is developed. It's in the second stage on its way to monetization of having scientists and laboratories developing their formulae to create pricing for insurance. Along those lines, they also have contracts with Pacific Life Re and I want to say MetLife, but that doesn't sound right. Two of the largest insurance companies in the world, and they are entering a booming economy, bigger than, by some measures, than our own, which is nearly virgin territory for insurance. And they're using their data collected by mobile phones to boost their entree. That's two. Three, they have, let's skip the text messaging and all that and go directly to rich communications messaging, which is going to be a massive future source of income for Finger. They signed this $300 million shelf registration with the SEC September 11th. Something's going on there. They own the Netflix of Southeast Asia. I don't know if it's the only one. When they bought Zhizhu Technology, it's in the news. You can look at it. They're good. That they have something like 100 million users. I'm forgetting something here. They're the toll booth to the online shopping malls. They collect a fee every time one of their customers uses their phone. And finally, China has been upgrading its phone grid to 5G. 5G. When someone buys a new phone in China, it is mandatory to buy, quote unquote, Apple Care on that phone. The example used is it costs $150, $125 a year for that Apple Care insurance. Finger motion, for its sliver of clients, which is big and growing, will get 25% of that revenue simply for existing. So TK16, we can talk, examine our navels, and go over and over and over each day. Are we there yet? Are we there yet, mommy? Are we there yet? When are we going to be there, mommy? How come we're not there yet, mommy? Mommy, it's been so long, mommy. Mommy, when are we going to be there? We can do that every single bloody day. Or we can have studied over the last year and a half the fundamentals of Finger and realize at some point the fundamental value is going to catch up in the stock price. This is how Warren Buffett got rich. He did his examination, placed his investments, and he didn't say, is there any news today? Is there any news today? Is there any news today? But on the other hand, I agree with you that we have to stay informed as we go along. And to answer your question, there was discussion of Finger. I mean, I think everything's good with Finger. There's nothing bad to say other than Lynn Partners and Lynn Partners clients short the shite out of the stock. They sell stock that doesn't exist. Oh, you don't have any proof of that. All right. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, the Vanguard Commodities Fund. There's another commodities fund out there. But Vanguard's good. Vanguard's good. There's another fund out there that I can't remember the name of. Now, the thing with these funds are there are two things. When the system collapses, anything in your brokerage account, your brokerage firm will take to save their own rear end. And then you'll have to go through the legal system. It's a possibility. The second thing is the funds are paper assets. They're not necessarily real. But I think that's a good investment, Deep. I do think that's a good investment. Commodities. Now, if you're going to every day look at it, is there any news on commodities? How about today? Is it happening tomorrow? When is? You don't want to do that. Commodities are going to go up, in my judgment. But more importantly, they're going to preserve your status as an independent financial unit much more than they're going to make you rich. They're going to preserve your status while everyone else loses everything. And that's the point. And I think that's great, Didi. Well, Lee, let me. I don't know if I have a feeling he's writing another book because I don't see him that much anymore. But then again, I stopped subscribing to his newsletter. This book was copyrighted in 2021. Let me see. He doesn't list the other books that he wrote here. But there are. I can't read to you the other titles of his books. But he has 3 others I read. Anyway, he doesn't list them for some reason. That's weird. Why wouldn't he list them? Maybe he's not all about himself. Anyway, he has other books. Let me leave it at that. He doesn't list them here. I think one was, here, best-selling author of The Oil Factor, which is 20 years old. I read that one. It's great. And then he wrote The Coming Economic Collapse, which I read, and it's a good book. And then he wrote Game Over. Homo sapientis. That's very funny. Sapientis, I think, stands for knowledge or something like that. You can look it up. I looked it up before. Oh, hey, good guy. We'll go on a walk. We'll go on a walk. All right. So, Mark, you were saying that I was, getting off subject. The reason I'm starting to press this into you guys is I don't know that our stocks are going to go up in time for us to wait. I'm shocked that we've had this much time, and I'm not ready. I tried to do business in various areas, and I was sorely disappointed in the integrity of my partners. Sorely. Rationalizations and greed. They're not ready. One guy might be, but the fact is, one of the ways of being ready is to have your frame of mind in place to understand it, so you can make decisions within that consequence. You can no longer make decisions based on an endless cornucopia of cheap oil. It doesn't exist. We can also no longer make our decisions as if somehow God blessed America, 5% of the world's population, giving Americans the right to consume 30% of the world's resources. That's not going to happen in the future. And a big part of America's economic might came from its economic might, came from its industrial might, its banking, its integrity, all of that. That is moving overseas. It's moving to Southeast Asia, to China, India, some parts of South America, Russia, believe it or not. And I believe it, and the Middle East. And while we argue for, anyway, I don't want to get into politics. Yes. PSLV, I would invest in. SLV, you got to be careful. But the Sprott Physical Silver Trust, PSLV, yes, invest in that. That's as close to owning that is physical silver, but you're owning it in your brokerage account. But yes, I would do PSLV. I wouldn't do SLV. But if you're trading SLV, go ahead and trade it. But just realize you're using a derivative. There's not real, I don't, Tommy, it's been so long. I used to study it, read it, learn it. It's like I did a doctorate in it for a while. But I don't remember any of the numbers. But it's not all real silver in SLV. And if you had a day of reckoning, people are going to lose. So I would do PSLV, Sprott Asset Management. Well, peak oil was originally a theory pushed, as you're saying, by Hubbard's peak, and he noticed that fields peak and decline, and he extrapolated that to worldwide production. Now the thing about peak oil is that there's been a lot of predictions of dire consequences in the oil markets, and they've never come true. But Vin, the world, just in round numbers, the world consumes 100 million barrels of oil a day. I'm sure it's somewhat less than that or somewhat more. 100 million barrels of oil a day. And it produces something like 90 million barrels of oil a day, 95. I'll try to look those numbers up. But there's a slight difference. Now, there might be some extra capacity in the UAE. There almost certainly is extra capacity in Iraq. And possibly in Libya, possibly. But in the United States, in Russia, in Saudi Arabia, the extra capacity to produce is offset by decline rates. It's going to be hard for Russia, the United States, or Saudi Arabia to ever get past 10, 11, 12 million barrels a day in production for a sustained period of time. And it's more likely that one of those countries, and the one I would predict that would fall first, probably is Saudi Arabia, but it could be the United States. More likely is those numbers are going to decline, and possibly sharply, in the near future. In the case of Saudi Arabia, the domestic demand for oil and gas is increasing at a rapid rate. The Saudis, the Canadians, and a couple other countries in the Middle East and the United States are the most prolific users. They use more oil per capita than the rest of the world. And that's going up. So on the supply side, when you take into account that there's world oil production probably declines by at least 5 million barrels a day per year, and probably more than that, and it will start to accelerate at some point. The supply of oil, I'm going to end this soon because my computer is freezing, but the supply of oil per day is not likely to go much higher than 100 million barrels a day. But the demand is going to go up because people in China, people in India, people in Southeast Asia, people in Africa, people in the Middle East want to live the way the United States population has lived. So there are some ideas out there, nano oil and other technologies. The world will always have a lot of oil. The question is this, as Dr. Lee points out, is energy in, energy out. And unfortunately, I think God gave us, the United States, another 20 years or so of oil. And instead of using it to develop where we live, how we live, our infrastructure, we've been squandering it in a throwback to the 70s and 80s. And I think we're going to be caught short. China, for all of its faults, is investing in a world which could live with much less oil. Now, my argument, the problem with China is water. I don't think they have as much water as they need. Anyway, let's not talk about all that. Um, um, hey, Mr. Tolbert. It's all bullshit. There's oil and gas everywhere. It's all a scam, just like global warming. Well, okay. I'll go with that. That way we don't have to do anything. Okay. Mike, you've convinced me. It's all a scam. Ah, I can sleep easy at night. It's all a scam. All I can tell you, Mike, is I've raised a lot of money for oil and gas, and I have invested a lot of money in oil and gas. And most of the time, at least on an exploratory basis, big zero. It's hard to find new sources of oil and gas. And I hope you're right, Mike. It must be nice to live with that. I don't think global warming's a scam at all. That's where I differ from a lot of my oil and gas friends. Um, the ocean has absorbed a lot of the carbon in the atmosphere, but it's getting saturated. So I actually expect a period of global warming. And you can argue, Mike, oh, it's because we're closer to the sun, or you can argue like the gentleman, uh, gosh, I forget his name. It's not Eric Rostow. Sorry, my brain. One one theory, and his chapter was, I think, Russian scientist. But our entire solar system is going through a thick part of the Milky Way, and that's putting pressure. You can argue these are the reasons why there'll be global warming. You can also argue that we're going to go into a period of colder temperatures because the sun flares are diminished. I don't know. These are all bigger things than any one human being can deal with. But you can't argue with, Mike. You can't argue with. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, the parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere, I can't remember, is 100 and something. It's now over 400, 425 parts per million. What you can't deny is there's a big experiment going on, putting the carbon that took eons to bury, putting it back into our atmosphere. And you can say it's a scam, but it's happening and it's an experiment. You can say changing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere has no effect, but you don't know that. It's just an experiment. I I think you don't know that answer yet. We have to wait and see what the announcement is. I'd be inclined to hold logic because if the new company that it reverses in doesn't do a toxic convertible dilutive financing, if they do not do that, if they avoid going into the clutches of a lying uh, thief, in my judgment, like Jeff Easton at Lynn Partners, if they can avoid that mistake, that's a reason to hold it. If the value is significant and the revenues are significant and they have cash and there's growth, well, who wouldn't want to hold a stock that's NASDAQ or may hopefully New York Stock Exchange would be better. Um, where institutions could buy it, where there's growth in revenue, and earnings. It might, maybe whatever it's worth, maybe it becomes $1 billion company or $2 billion company. But we have to me, PS71, there will be selling in the short run because everyone will want to sell. But I think there could be a short squeeze too, which will offset that. But we don't know enough yet about holding it long term. I'm open to the idea of holding it. I am. If the new management does not do a toxic, dilutive, poisonous, criminal deal like such as Lynn Partners offers, in my judgment, and if the growth is tremendous, why not hold it? We'll own a company that could become a blue chip company. Well, Mike, I don't know about that. Do you know the tar sands in Canada? Oh my gosh. Oof. They're not clean. That's not clean at all. But you do have a lot of trees. And I think, I hate to say it, but I think Trump's right. When we put ourselves at a disadvantage vis-a-vis China, and China is burning coal. The key to climate change, in my judgment, leave the coal in the ground. And the other thing is we've got to get rid of our dryers so we can get rid of nuclear power. Anyway, my computer is freezing. Yeah, that's one of the, Mike, that's one of the things that the guy that ran Goddard, he's got a name that sounds like the Muppets. He wrote Storms of My Grandchildren and another book that I read. His name, my brain isn't working. The guy that invented Muppets. Anyway, a scientist, Goddard, who spoke truth to power. He had 4 solutions, and I won't bore you. I've talked about them before, but one of the main ones is stop destroying the trees and replanting trees. You got to get trees, as you point out, they're the lungs of the earth, and but it's not just trees, Mike. It's plankton, it's other organisms like that. But yeah, Canada has a lot of trees. There's no question. Hey, Sideshow Bob. I'm not going to talk about that stock. I know I did talk about it in the past, and I think you have my thoughts on it, but I've been asked not to discuss it, and I'm not going to. I mean, I guess in full disclosure, I still own my shares. It's not a huge position, but I'm not going to talk about it. All right, I'm going to go walk my dog. So unless there's a question or two, that pisses me off on silver, Mark. I wanted to buy it when it was down at 15, 16. I guess I'll be buying it at higher prices. It's frustrating. But what can you do? And once silver and gold go up, where to make returns, where to go is miners. You have to invest in miners. So anyway, I'll wish everyone I'll wish everyone a good night. And um, I know it seems like it's distracting, but if I can get some of these concepts, this is just one guy. There's so much more out there. But if I can get some of these concepts into your head, you'll start thinking in terms of, I hope, acquiring real assets, getting out of this debt-based system, and preparing for a world that's going to be dramatically different than the world you grew up in. We have truly lived in a blessed time. It won't be bad, the new world. It's just going to be different, significant. Jim Hansen, that's it. Jim Hansen. That's it. Jim Hansen. He was Henson. This guy I'm talking about is Jim Hansen. Thank you, Tim. All right, I'm going to sign off and wish everyone peace, love, and happiness. Remember to pray for world peace. Pray for that young woman who had her head bashed into the sidewalk. Pray for all the suffering in the world. Pray for those aid workers that were killed in the Middle East. Pray for the children caught in war zones that they had nothing to do with. And pray for peace in the world. And, I don't think it's too late to remember to pray for Lou and his family. That was a shock. And pray for Jenny L. Ongoing. And I pray for each of you. Yeah, I should cut down on how long I stream. I didn't mean it to go this long today. I wanted to just do less than 2 hours. So I'm going to I agree with you. I think about that all the time. Originally, with the sponsor of the SPAC, everything was projected for a de-SPAC and the reverse merger in November. But that was so catastrophic, that de-SPAC, that I think there were reverberations that took a while to stabilize. So I figured December, part of January was just dealing with the aftermath of that. But then, so let's call it February, March. They had already selected, according to the interviews we had, or narrowed it down, who they were going to reverse merger with. So the way I see it, Heath, is by going into 2024 on both sides of the equation, Logix and whoever the company who's going to reverse merger in, you have a full year's audit. You have a full year's numbers to get done. So I think that's been, I'm guessing, but I think that's probably been the delay, getting all that done, because it's a lot of work. So then the question is, when did they start doing if I'm right, the numbers for 2023? I assume both sides have already started. And then the final question is, how long does it take? How long does it take? That's where it gets tricky. Does it take a month? Does it take 2 months? Does it take 90 days? Heath, my belief is something will be announced on Logic. I have no information, but I believe something. Now, 45 days from now. So let's see what you're saying. End of May, April, May. Yeah, I would say end of May is the latest. I would guess May 15th is the latest. But I really believe something will happen or be announced in April. Man, there's so many ifs, buts, and slips in that estimate. I'm just estimating. What's happening? It's happening. Tapper Dan. Don't you listen to him, Dan? Yeah, Tommy, I don't know what it is. I'm actually, as I'm talking to you, I'm worried it's COVID, which I'd hope it's not, or there's something wrong in my brain. But it could just be that I'm tired. I told you I walked into this mirror in New York. I walked into it hard, and because my eye, it's my eye, you know. I love New York. I love New York City, but I really like DC. But both cities to me are changing, and maybe it's just me being a little bit older than I used to be. Uh, but I don't. Both cities don't feel as safe as they used to. But that's just mostly a feeling. There was nothing bad that happened. But I love being in New York and the energy of New York and being in where we met, the little salon or whatever you would call it. It was great. It was a great experience. Yeah, Sunil, you should really thank him. He was amazing and working so hard up there, and he's really he's who you should thank. So anyway, it's 5:21. This is freezing, so I might as well sign off. I wish everyone the best. I tried to not I tried to not rant or anything, and maybe Mike is right. Um, I'll do more shorter ones. Let's start thinking about. Let's start. Let's start thinking about. Yeah. Let's start thinking about the future. Getting ready for it. All right. Cheers.